Thanks, Mark. It's good to be here with all of you today. I just want to invite us before we jump into either look at the folks on the screen here who are actually in their homes or in their workplaces. They're not just little boxes, right? Human beings. And if you can't look at them, maybe just to imagine them, feel their presence, and maybe send everyone a smile and a blessing for well-being, for happiness, for freedom from suffering, for connection. It's nice to see your Shana Punim, your beautiful faces. And my name is Sam Feinsmith. I'm one of the members of the senior core faculty at IJS, and I feel very blessed to be here running this series with you and sharing a practice that's been so transformative for me personally. I'm wearing glasses. I have long brown hair. I have light skin, and I'm wearing a checkered blue shirt. And I just want to welcome you in the fullness of your humanity and affirm that however you're showing up in body, heart, mind, identity, social context, you are welcome here. And if you're able to do so and you feel comfortable doing so, I want to invite you to share your pronouns alongside your name. I go by he, him, his. And I'm calling in today from what is currently known as Evanston, Illinois, on the land of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. For those who may just be joining us today, and also for those who've been with us over the last couple of days, it's always worth kind of a recap and a kind of situation or situating, I should say, of ourselves in the arc of practice that we're traversing here. So we discussed a little bit using Alan Liu and his beautiful orientation to the season of mourning that is coming up, beginning on the 17th of Tammuz and culminating on Tisha B'Av when we commemorate the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the horrible carnage and brutality and oppression and exile that went along with that experience. And as Lou reminds us, that's actually when our high holiday prep begins, right? It doesn't begin on the 1st of Elul, it actually begins on Tisha B'Av itself, when we acknowledge that the walls of even our most cherished structures ultimately crumble to the ground, and that everything, without exception, is impermanent. So our prep for the high holidays really begins with a kind of letting go of the illusion of stability, of solid ground underfoot, letting go of the walls of our false identities and pretenses and masks and ineffective strategies for coping with the inherent groundlessness of life and being. And instead of turn toward that which does remain, a kind of inner refuge that can never crumble. And Lou invites us to do that work through the question, who am I? Right? Who am I really? And what will be left when the walls of constructed identity come down? So during the last 2 days, we questioned our unconscious identification with the finite body and mind as who we are, by recognizing the conditioned and transient nature of all physical sensations and mental contents. And now that we've begun to weaken that identification some, And of course, we've only taken some initial steps here. We've just dipped our toes in the water. We can spend years and years, seeing through and weakening our identification with the finite body and the finite mind as who we are absolutely and ultimately. Now that we've begun to weaken that identification and to begin to pull apart the seams of our constructed identity as separate, kind of isolated, atomized, individualized selves, we're poised to turn to the work of actually recognizing our true nature beyond our constructed personality or identity. And I really want to follow Lou's lead here, because what he suggests is that once we can let go of the walls of our constructed identity, right? All we then need to do is to turn toward that which remains. What remains after we clear away all the rubble and all of the detritus and all of the parts of ourselves that are not really who we are. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to find support in a couple of teachings. I'd like to invite Kat with a grateful bow to Kat for Kat's support here to share the screen, share the texts on the screen, and you can find a link to the texts for today as well in the chat. And our first text, once again, comes from Rabbi Kalonymus Kalmar Shapiro, the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, and a book he wrote for more advanced students of spiritual practice called Hachsharat HaAvrechim. And again, I'm going to read in English, and feel free to follow along in the Hebrew if you'd like. In this world in general, as well as in every small item, the portion of God's divinity is the essence of all. So just to contextualize this within the larger Hasidic mystical theology that we find so compelling at IJS, the Hasidic tradition teaches that each one of us is essentially a chelek Eloha mima'al, which means a chip off the old divine block, a little portion or a piece of divinity. And what he's saying is that everything in the world, everything, not just human beings, has a portion of God's divinity within it that is its essential nature, its essential being. Trees, stones, animals, human beings, etc. And he says that this is an essence which is unvariable and unchanging. God's essence doesn't move, doesn't change, it doesn't flag. The rest, the part that changes and varies, is just the garment. So the physical material world that we see that is characterized by unceasing change and fluctuation, that's really just the outermost layer of the divine being. But if you go deep down into the depth dimension of all of these physical, material, changing and evanescent realities, says our teacher, you'll discover an inherent stillness that doesn't change. But we should know that the garment of divinity, which is our physical material world and all that it contains, right? It's not foreign like a garment which we people wear. It's not foreign. When we put on an article of clothing, it's not made of our body. It's separate from our body. It's alien or foreign to us. It's not essential to us. But with the divine garment, right, it is the outermost layer of the essence of the divine portion. This is as taught in the holy books, Kehadein kamtza de levushe mine uve, like a caterpillar whose garment is part of its very being. This teaching originally comes from the Midrash, the classical Midrash in Genesis Rabbah, but it gets picked up in many Kabbalistic and Hasidic teachings. So think of the caterpillar for a moment, right? When it spins its cocoon, Right? The cocoon is made out of its very own body, out of its very own being, and then becomes its casing that allows for its metamorphosis and transformation, right? And ultimately its full manifestation as a butterfly. And it's the same, says our teacher, with divinity, right? At the essential level, God is pure stillness, unmoved, unchanging, infinite, without beginning, without end. But the way that inherent essence of God then manifests as the created world comes out of God's own being, and as it were, becomes a garment for the divine essence. And on the level of the garment, it's all change. It's all change. It's all change. So let's pause there for a second, right? If this is the case, and Kat, you can pull down the screen share for a moment. This is truly the case, then what our teacher is suggesting is that if we can peel away the garments of our own being, of our own identity, and dive into the depth dimension of our own being, what we'll discover there is that portion of divinity within ourselves that is inherently still, inherently peaceful, unmoving, unflagging, not subject to the variable conditions of time and space. Okay, if you're with me, just give me a thumbs up. You don't need to agree with it. You just need to understand what he's saying, okay? Okay, hope everyone was able to give a thumbs up. So, what are the garments? What are the garments? The garments are the finite body and the finite mind, both of which are characterized by movement, change, ebb and flow, arising, passing away. And what we've been doing over the last couple of days is just recognizing that this is so, that this is the nature of the body-mind. The body-mind is a time body-mind. It's a time body-mind. And as such, it's subject to the ravages of time. And the practice of self-inquiry, which is the practice we've been exploring over the last couple of days and will continue to deepen into, helps us to peel away the garments to discover the inherent stillness of our divine essence. That's really what this practice is designed to do. Kat, if you could pull up the screen share once more. We're going to turn now to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Provides us with such a beautiful metaphor for understanding the nature of this essential part of us. And he's commenting here on a beautiful verse. The path of the righteous is like radiant sunlight, ever brightening until noon. From Proverbs 4:18. Rabbi Nachman says, you want to understand what this verse means? You need to understand that the sun itself shines with the same intensity, irrespective of whether it's the beginning or the middle of the day here on earth. Yet its radiance is blocked by the earth, which creates an obstruction between us and the sun. Right? We have this strange turn of phrase in English. We say the sun is setting or the sun is rising. Nothing happens to the sun. The earth is just turned away. The part of the earth upon which we're living and inhabiting, right? That part of the earth is turned away from the sun such that we are now, if it's nighttime, in the shadow of the sun. But if you ask the sun if anything changed from its perspective, it would say, what are you talking about? I've been shining brilliantly the whole time. My light hasn't been dimmed in any way, shape, or form just because planet Earth turned away from me, or a part of planet Earth turned away from me. This is why the sunlight doesn't shine so expansively at daybreak, only little by little until it shines on the whole earth. Or at least the slice of earth upon which Rabbi Nachman, right, was writing at the time. So too with the tzaddik. The tzaddik is the person who's fully realized their true nature and has completely abandoned any false identity as the locus of who they are. So too with the tzaddik, whose light always shines within. The blockage lies only with the recipients. In this case, too, the blockage lies with the earth, namely this temporal world, which blocks the light on account of our tendency to get mired in it, keeping us from being able to receive the tzaddik's light. Just to say, right, just like the metaphor, we tend to get so caught up in our temporal pursuits. And our attention is always directed outwardly. And as such, we can't actually see the inner sun that's shining inside of us at all times equally, simply because our attention is turned the other way. He goes on to say, at face value, it's quite difficult to understand how such a small thing can block an object some thousands of times greater, seeing that the whole world is so minuscule compared to the divine. Yet this is in accordance with a known parable. If you hold a small coin immediately in front of your eye, it will hinder your eye from seeing a great mountain, even though the mountain is thousands of times larger than the coin. And since the coin is right up against your eye, it hinders your vision such that you are blind to something many times greater than the coin. Likewise, when we come into this world, we become mired in transient worldly preoccupations, such that it appears to us that nothing is better. We think this is all there is, because we become so preoccupied. Remember yesterday's text, if you were with us yesterday, right from the Piazetzner Rabbi, who said, when you feel joy, you get totally swept into your joy, and you can't feel anything else at that moment. You're not aware of anything else in that moment. You become completely collapsed into your sense of identity, becomes completely collapsed into the joy. Right? And when you feel sadness or anxiety, you become completely collapsed into that sadness or anxiety. This is the nature of our attention, right? Because we haven't really trained our attention to step out of our kind of identification with, preoccupation with, and enchantment with these transient, thoughts, emotions, experiences, possessions, etc. Okay, so it's as if we have a coin right in front of our eye and we can't see a mountain. Likewise, when we come into this world, we become mired in transient worldly preoccupations such that it appears to us that nothing is better. Right? This tiny, minuscule temporal world keeps us from seeing the great and exalted light of the divine, which is some thousands of times greater than it. This is exactly like the parable of the sun just mentioned, which is self-evident. Right? So what does it mean to be a tzaddik? What does it mean to be a tzaddik? And Kat, you can take down the screen share now. A fully realized person according to our tradition. It means that we become disenchanted with the transient things of this world, meaning that we no longer fixate upon finding happiness and lasting well-being in impermanent transient phenomena. And instead, we turn our attention inward toward our divine essence, which, according to Rabbi Nachman, shines inside of us like the radiant sun, never ever ceasing in its radiance, its luminosity, and its beauty, and its stability. So we're going to try an exercise now. We're going to try just a 30-minute practice, a 30-second practice. And then we're going to come out and share what we noticed in the chat. And then we're going to go into a deeper practice period. And this practice is inspired by Tara Brach, actually, whose words we'll hear toward the end of our practice session today. But the practice is simple. We've already noticed that the body is impermanent. It's transient. It's a time body. So we can't hinge our happiness and well-being on the body. We've also noticed that the finite mind, right, it's always changing, it's always moving. There's nothing that moves through the mind that is permanent or essential to us. But we can't hinge our happiness on mental objects either, can we? What's left? What's left? In my experience, the only thing that's left is awareness or consciousness. So I want to invite you for the next 30 seconds to try to not be aware. For the next 30 seconds, try to not be aware. It doesn't matter if your eyes are open or closed. Okay? Doesn't matter if you're sitting or standing. For the next 30 seconds, try to not be aware, beginning now. Time's up. What did you discover? Please take just a moment to write into the chat. Kohenet Ruach Devor, right? I'm at least aware that I'm trying not to be. I think it's impossible. A number of people are writing in here, right? Impossible, was aware of not being aware. More aware than ever. So we all laugh and chuckle a little bit, right? Because actually this has always been the case, but we haven't paid attention. There is no way that we could possibly destroy, divide, chop up, eliminate, excise, get rid of our inherent awareness or consciousness. Pretty amazing, huh? Even when you're mindless, there's awareness that mindlessness is arising. And of course, even when you're mindful, there's awareness that mindfulness is arising. Is that not so? Good. So we have the rejoinder here, but wait a minute, I go to sleep every night and I'm not conscious. We'll come back to that in a little bit, probably during the Q&A session. Okay, really good question. So what we're going to do now is we're going to spend our practice period of about 13 or 14 minutes just becoming aware of awareness itself, turning our attention into this inner sun, this inner radiance, this inner beingness or knowingness that perceives the impermanent objects moving through it, but is itself beginningless and endless, ceaseless, inherently still, inherently peaceful. So let's settle in. Ground into the body for a moment, perhaps taking some deep breaths, settling into a posture that will enable you to be relatively still, relaxed, and dignified. The eyes can be open or closed. And simply become aware that you are aware. You can let go of objects of world, body, and mind. You don't need to stop those phenomena from arising, but keep your attention grounded and turned inward toward the awareness itself. Just as we would with the breath, we make the awareness itself the object of our attention, the place where we rest our attention. And of course, if you get pulled away, just as you would with the breath or any other anchor in meditation, you simply come back. Come back to focusing on awareness itself. To knowing that you know. One way to facilitate that return when you get lost in thought is just to notice thinking is arising. And recognize that thinking is arising in awareness. Is it not? So you can let the thoughts fall into the background and allow the mind to sink back into the awareness that knows thoughts. The awareness through which the thoughts move. As you attend to the awareness in this way, to this aware presence at the core of your being, you might also engage in a process of inquiry. Simply holding some very simple questions in heart and mind as you observe awareness and investigate its nature. Question number 1. Does awareness itself have a beginning or an end? You could stay with that question for the duration of the period, or you might consider the next question. Does awareness itself have form, shape, or color? Question number 3. Is awareness a thing or an object? Or is it nothing in the sense of no thing? And the final question. Even as the objects of this world, this body, this mind move, swirl, change, fall apart, reconstruct themselves, fall apart again, is the inherent stillness of awareness in any way tarnished, interrupted, impinged upon, or impacted in any way? We'll conclude with some words from Tara Brach. Awareness is open, wakeful, and spontaneously responsive, lacking form, center, or boundary, or any owner or inherent self. Awareness is the open, allowing space in which all existence arises and dissolves. Although empty itself of thingness, awareness is alive with wakefulness, the capacity to recognize the changing flow of sounds, sensations, smells, visual impressions. And awareness relates to this changing flow, including the infinite diversity of temporary living forms with warmth or tenderness. This unlimited capacity for responsiveness includes love, compassion, joy, appreciation, and the many other qualities of heart. These three qualities of awareness, open, wakeful, and tender, are integrated and inseparable. We might best understand them by likening them to a sunlit sky. There is no way to separate the light or the wakefulness from the open space it illuminates. There is no way to separate the warmth or the tenderness we feel from the shining light of the sun. They are inextricable expressions of a whole. And this open, wakeful, tender awareness is the essence of our original and true nature. As we learn to turn our attention toward this awareness, as we learn to rest in it, we increasingly embody those qualities and live from the purity and fullness of who we really are. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sam. Friends, we seal the practice as we do each day, offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site to recite the mourner's Kaddish, the traditional Kaddish recited by those in mourning. If you're not reciting Kaddish, we invite you to stay present. For those who are, please. And if you are reciting it, you're welcome to put the name or names of those you're honoring, remembering today in the chat box now or after you recite the words. And thanks to Kat for sharing the words on the screen. If you're reciting the Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together. And you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah. Yalma Dibra, Kiviam Malchute, Kayechon, Yomechon, Hayet, Agala, Zman Kari, Imru, Yehi Shmei Rabba, Mevarach, Olam, Amen.
Yitbarach,
Allah,
Yitgadal, Yitkalev, Yitkalav, Shmei, Yitkadashah, Imru, Shalom and comfort, Yeshiva, Yiram, V'Amal, V'Imru, Amen. Yishman, V'Rabu, Shemaya, Hayim, Aleinu, V'Yachol Yisrael, Imru, Amen.
Shalom b'mamav, v'yaseh לנו,
Shalom, Rabbeinu, V'Kol Yisrael, V'Kol Ha'olam, V'Imru, Amen.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. You're welcome to stay on for a conversation with Rabbi Sam Feinsmith about today's gorgeous practice and teaching. And if you're leaving us, we hope you'll join us tomorrow for the final session in this 4-session series on When Things Fall Apart. And if you can't make it, or if you've missed any of the 2 previous ones, all, as I said earlier, all the sessions are recorded and all the recordings are posted on our YouTube channel. And when the series is completed, we'll post all 4 of them as a single playlist that you can always revisit at your convenience. Thanks to Kat Esposito, as always, for holding our space today with beautifully with grace and skill. Thanks to our teacher, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, for this extraordinary series and deep practice today. And if you're leaving us now, we hope we'll see you tomorrow at our usual time. And if you're staying on and you'd like to ask Sam a question, please put it in the chat. We'll keep an eye on that. Or if you'd like to just share a reflection on your experience, or if you'd like to continue just to sit and use this time and space and the container of this community to sit a little bit for a bit longer, you're welcome to do that as well. And you can, of course, turn the volume down on your device if you'd like to do that. All right, Sam, that was beautiful, beautiful. And people may not know this. I just wanted to throw in terms of context, because you referenced Alan Liu's book, and referenced choosing this theme for this series based on the upcoming part of the Jewish calendar, which involves kind of the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem and ultimately the destruction of the walls and of the city on the 9th of Av. So the summer is a period of falling apart, or letting ourselves fall apart to reach. So I just want to invite you to talk for a second, because we are going to, just a heads up for folks, that in Elul, the month before the New Jewish Year, in August and September, we will be offering a free program of practice we call the Shofar Project, Getting Real for the New Year, and we'll be basing that on Alan Liu's book. So you were already giving us all kind of a sneak preview of that practice, Sam. I just want to invite you to help us look ahead a little bit, even though we're trying to stay very much present. In terms of this, what we did today, of this really finding that home in that inner refuge, where would you put that in the arc of the calendar? If we're really kind of compressing a longer process into 4 days here, but where would you put that?
Yeah. Traditionally, teshuvah is understood as repentance, right? Just to say, I screwed up. I recognize that I did. I want to make amends. I want to do better. So I'm going to make a commitment to changing my ways in the future. And of course, I'll apologize and try to patch things up with the people that, I harmed, without in any way disparaging the importance of that kind of work for our spiritual growth and repair. There's a more mystically inclined way to understand teshuvah, right? Which is, since teshuvah means to return, question is, where are we returning to? And the answer of the Hasidic masters is that we're returning to our spiritual home. And that when we do engage in harmful behavior, it's only because we have lost sight of, forgotten, veered from, gone far afield from our spiritual home, which is to say from this pure divine nature. So really the work of the high holidays is about coming home. Right? It's really about coming home. And I would say that that's really that essential work of the high holidays and of teshuvah. And, I think what Alan Liu is pointing to is that it's hard to want to do that work of coming home unless you realize that all of the other houses you constructed, they're not helpful. It's kind of like the story of the three little pigs, right? There's a straw house and we're trying to take refuge inside the straw house, of this world and hinge all of our well-being and all of our hopes on vapor, basically. Right? Vapor.
Well, given that, I want to ask you this because this came up in the question, a lot of great questions, which we won't be able to get to all of them, and I'll try to get to some of them. There's a question here about those walls, and you brought that text about how the externalities are also an aspect or an emanation, right, of that inner refuge. So to get clear here about this kind of mysticism, which some might feel, is about basically negating the physical world, right? Negating our bodies, and I don't think that's what you're getting at here at all. But there's a question: if the physical world is no thing, what's the purpose of existing? So I want to invite you to, circle back to that about these, externalities that are manifestations of our inner essence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Hasidic tradition is not a tradition that disparages the body or the physical world in any way. In fact, it sees the physical world and the body as a vehicle for growing in consciousness and spiritual awareness, and argues that in many ways, cultivating higher consciousness isn't possible without the body, without going through the body itself. We're not circumventing the body. Remember, we started on Monday with an exploration of the body and entered this practice through the gateway of the body. The problem is not with the body. The body is divine. The body is an expression of divinity. Remember that teaching that you just cited, Mark, and this is really the thrust of all Hasidic spirituality, right? Suggests that divinity has an essential nature, but then manifests, right, in limitless forms. Or you could say that, the activity of that essence is creation. And the creation unfolds in infinite multiplicity and diversity. And each individual wave within the larger divine ocean is unique, right? Whether it's, a human being or an animal or a galaxy or, a molecule or an atom, whatever the case may be, right? There's literally infinite multiplicity. And we might say that every single item, however minuscule or vast it is a new kind of garment, right? A unique kind of garment for the divine essence.
Mm-hmm.
So these two exist simultaneously, just as in the story that I told yesterday of the parable of the ocean and the wave, right? The ocean and the wave, the ocean and all of its individual waves, right, exists simultaneously as two sides of the same reality. Okay. The problem is not in the physical reality itself. The problem is in our perception of the physical reality, that we take it
Would
to
you
be.
say that's the clinging to the physical?
Yes, our
reality?
perception of reality as somehow fixed, right, is actually a mental overlay or belief, right, born of ignorance, born of inattention, right? And so what that causes us then to do is to hang our happiness and well-being and stability on things that are in motion, right, which just doesn't work. And it drums up all of this dissatisfaction. Think of in a very concrete way, this is true for me, I'm sure it's true for many of us, right? Think about all of the hopes you hinged on a new job or a new relationship or a new car or a new phone, right? And how enamored we tend to become with the things of this world because of this faulty perception. Dalai Lama says that when we're caught up in desire, we only see the attractive qualities of the object of our desire, when in fact it has many qualities that are not attractive, one of which is that it's going to change. It's going to fall apart.
Right. Would you say that's,
Mark, I know you know this
Yeah.
because we talked about this years ago, right? I saw all of this arise for me when I bought a new car. I watched it all happen in my mind, and I thought, wow, the mind.
how's that car doing?
There's a great story about the this is a story I told when I was teaching about what I experienced when I was, thinking about buying a new car. There's a great story about the Thai master Ajahn Chah. He was one of the foremost meditation masters and teachers of the Thai forest monastery tradition, who trained a bunch of different Western teachers who are now running centers all over the world. But some Thai dignitaries came to visit him because Thailand is a Buddhist country, and monks are venerated. And they brought him, I think, a Ming Dynasty teacup, very valuable. And he looked at it mindfully and he said, "This cup is already broken. This cup is already broken." That's how it is, right? What if when we looked upon the things of this world that we find to be so attractive, we could know this is already broken?
Sam, would you put that in the category of idolatry? And if we were to frame
Yeah,
it
it's a kind of idolatry. Yeah, we
it's
assign,
fixing that which is transitory or
and we
ephemeral.
assign intrinsic value, right? Intrinsic value
Mhm.
and promise to objects of this world when they hold no intrinsic value in and of themselves. They hold intrinsic value as expressions of divinity and bearers of spirit, right? But not in and of themselves as material objects.
Yeah. Well, just have a couple of minutes, Sam, and we have many great questions, but two that I want to condense into one is you used the word awareness. In Hebrew, I guess it would be, we're talking about da'at, right?
Yeah.
And there's a question about could you use that synonymously with presence? Or mindfulness? Is mindfulness the same as awareness?
Presence and mindfulness, I would say, are two different things. If you look really carefully and precisely at, the phenomena as they're happening. So we can be present, and there can be a sense of, I am a person, right? And I am present. Awareness itself is not about being present. It is the presence itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? It itself doesn't have a sense of being a person. It's beyond personhood, beyond identity, because it's empty, completely empty. And so, yes, I would say that awareness itself, or pure awareness, is exactly synonymous with pure presence or pure beingness, right? But it doesn't come with a sense of I am this person over here who's working hard to be present. It is spontaneously self-luminous, self-presencing, we might say, right? And when it comes to the question of mindfulness, the Tibetan tradition is helpful here because it talks about constructed or fabricated mindfulness and unconstructed or unfabricated mindfulness. So, you know, when I first started practicing, I was constructing my mindfulness, which is to say that we sit down in a chair, on a cushion, or in walking meditation, we try to be mindful. And we see that that kind of mindfulness arises when certain causes and conditions are present and collapses when certain causes and conditions are present, right? And in that regard, it's just another object of awareness, right? But in terms of the knowing quality and present centered or present moment quality of awareness itself, right? That's a kind of unfabricated mindfulness. It's always been there. It'll always be there. There's nothing you can do in any way to conjure it or bring it forth, and there's nothing that you can do to make it collapse or disappear.
All right, we're a bit over, so we're going to end here. There's so much wonderful comments and questions in the chat. Sam, thanks so much, as always, for this really exquisite teaching and practice. So valuable, I really think, for so many of us. And look forward to the fourth and final session tomorrow. And we hope everyone will be able to join us either live or follow on the recording. Thanks, as always, to Kat, and especially thanks to each of you for being here and for your devotion to this practice and this community. And we hope to see you tomorrow. Many blessings, everyone.
See you tomorrow. Take care.